Welcome to Crossing Darkness, a podcast about role-playing games ranging from the world of darkness to MMORPGs like EVE Online and everything in between. We broadcast live over Twitch and are open to answering questions during the show. Today, however, we will be talking about one of my favorite video games, EVE Online, a science fiction MMORPG. In this game, you become an immortal pod pilot that allows you to control the most powerful spaceships in all of the galaxy. Activities include market manipulation, spaceship combat, player versus player, player versus environment, spaceship combat, mining, exploration, empire building, pirating, and just much, much more. As well as creating podcasts and crazy stuff, because I'm your host, Frozen Fallout. Today we have a really special guest on here, Matterall, host and creator of the Talking in Stations, a podcast all about the crazy universe, about EVE Online. How's space treating you these days, Matterall?
It's really cold out there. We're doing great, all of us at Talking in Stations. Thanks.
Awesome, yeah. So, how'd you get into EVE Online originally? What was kind of the path for you to get into this crazy game that we all call home?
Yeah, so I was playing. I'll actually go far back. I played video games kind of as a kid, but they were just barely being developed at the time, and I kind of stopped doing all that until I was older and in my own situation. Basically had my own place and all that stuff, and my friend said you should play, or I bought a computer and it came with a video game, so all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, video games, because I'd been interested in other things before that. So I started playing, like I played Diablo, I played Metal Gear Solid, and even a Zelda game or something. So I was only playing like 3 or 4 games, and they were all classics now, if you think about it. So I was just like, these video games really have something going that's amazing. I was working in film at the time, so I was very interested in entertainment. And so when I played video games, I just thought, like, yeah, these have totally matured since I was a kid. So then I forgot about video games again and was doing career stuff. And then I started working at an ad agency, and this guy that I worked with was like, hey, do you want to play this MMO? And I had read about MMOs, but I didn't know what they were at all. So then I was like, yeah, I've heard about this, but I don't know what it is, or how do I, where do I put my quarter?
Right, you've been in the single player universe, and console universe. Did you even play like video games on a computer at all?
Just those. You're
just
right.
the Diablo.
Just the Diablo one was, yeah. And that was because my nephew said I should probably play it because I would like the art direction.
It's a great game to play. So
yeah, it was amazing, the music and the immersion, and I was just like, "There's something here." So when my friend at work said, "Hey, try this game," it was called Star Wars Galaxies, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll try that." And I was like, boom, lag fest. I couldn't see anything, and he's like, yeah, get away from the city. That's, whatever. So this was in the infancy of video games. That was 2003 or 2004. Infancy of MMOs, I guess. And it turns out that the communication wasn't there yet. Like the high speed internet wasn't quite there yet. So things were laggy, uncomfortable. And so you needed to spread out to kind of play it.
And it had some graphics. I played that game because like Ultima Online was one of my first original MMORPGs that I played, and they had a lot of lag problems. But I feel like Star Wars Galaxy had a lot more because there's more going on. There's more to the graphics and stuff like that.
Yeah, the graphics were really high. They weren't cartoony, so they were kind of serious, and that appealed to me. But yeah, you would rubber band like crazy. But it hit me that if I saw like, a big buffalo type creature running in the distance, that I could run and catch up to it and then kill it and eat it and all that too. But, I could interact with it. And I was stunned at how expansive the world was, and that everybody else in it was real. And that when I went to sleep, the world continued, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where a dungeon master goes to sleep and the world shuts down goes into hibernation. So there's something here. It was I forget what the word is, but it's almost like a virtual world that is inhabited whether you're there or not.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
that appealed to me too. So I played that and kind of got into it, but I was never so into it. It was always very casual because, again, I'm doing other stuff. And I think something happened, and I decided to try to do it right. I guess I got just hooked at a certain point, but it was like maybe 3 or 4 years after I'd started playing. And so I just started like organizing a group and organizing people and creating events for people and just, writing down bylaws and just organizing people. And then I was like, whoa, way into it, and decided I needed to stop. So I needed to play something that was, I like this virtual world idea, but I needed to play something that was a lot less time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked EVE Online.
Oh wow, interesting interesting jump there.
Yeah, had no idea what I was doing. It's like, it's like going from pedestrian level weed addiction to crack. It was like, but I liked it because it was professional level stuff, so I could respect myself.
It looks professional. It's got corporations and the whole market and the whole, like there was an EVE economist. What was the time period that was about that you jumped into?
2008 is when I started.
Okay, yep.
2009.
So, did they have the economist at that point?
Yeah.
Yep.
Professor, was it Q? E, I think it was. He had some letter of the alphabet, but he was there talking about the economy. True economist. I think you've heard Hilmar say that. He said he was talking to this guy trying to convince him to join. And actually, that was one of the draws that pulled me in. I heard they had a full-time economist, and I was like, that sounds cool. But Hilmar said that he talked to the guy and said, why don't you look at this? This is kind of like an economy. And the professor said, no, that's an economy. And so he joined up and became the economist, like the professional economist for EVE Online's economy. Those kinds of things that sit out there are very powerful ideas about the game. They're very strong recruitment tools.
Absolutely.
So on one level, people say, let's just play this game and pew, 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 and all this other stuff. And that is totally fine. But you're playing a video game, and that's okay. On another level, there is, what I call anthropology, which is how do people react in certain situations? What are their motivations? Where are their conflicts? How do people treat each other in good times and in bad, and these kinds of things? And I was very interested in a lot of that kind of stuff. And EVE Online has that in spades. So it's an expansive game. And I think you rattled off like 6 or 7 or 8 professions, and that doesn't even begin to cover it.
Right. No, yeah. It's like, I was like, when I was writing it down, I was like, I'll just do like a crazy rattle off of it and just be like, and much, much more, because it's just, I really wanted to emphasize how it's like, you kind of start off, it's like, oh yeah, market manipulation. That's kind of weird. Spaceship combat. Oh yeah, that kind of sounds like mining, exploration. Like it's like empire building. Wait a minute. Okay, so you're starting to get to like some pretty, and my favorite profession, pirating. I wish it used to be kind of like the golden days when you could really ransom and pirate people, but now it's just all about the kill mail. But I'm still okay with that.
I love pirating, and I lament how it's changed over the years, because there was a real richness of choices that you used to have, right? Like, let me disable this guy's ship. Well, now I've got him pinned. Now I want money out of him, so I'm going to ransom him. And is he tricking me by stalling me so his friends come and rescue him? Or, is he legit captured and he's in his cargo? He has something that's priceless that I should know about, but I don't, because I haven't scanned the ship down. There's just a ton of different things to think about when you captured somebody. And then you have to decide, like, after they pay you, if you feel like you want to kill them anyway. And I always thought I always admired pirates like Veroni, right? who actually worked for CCP later on, but early in his career, he was a pirate, but he was always honorable. And all his guys were honorable. And if they weren't, he dressed them down and kicked them out and stripped them of all their, earnings. So Absolutely. Honorable pirates, love them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what was did you get into pirating right away, or what was the first activity that you kind of got into when you got into Eve?
No, when I first got into Eve, it was I'd read a lot about it, researched it kind of. My friend kept trying to get me in since like 2006, but I was resisting it because I could barely handle one game at a time. But when I finally did join, I was just aware that you were up for grabs anywhere you were, so people could kill you at any time. So I did my first mission. I like to remember this because I remember the intensity of the feelings, but I was in a little bantam or something, or a little tiny little frigate starter ship, and it said go mine some rocks, and so I went to go mine them. And you go to a beacon, and then you have to kind of like slow boat up to the rock, get within range and start mining it, and then fill up your cargo and then go back and turn that in. It's a very simple proposition, and I did that. But as I was mining, I was realizing somebody just appeared on my overview and my radar, and I was starting to freak out because I thought, "What's that guy doing here? He shouldn't be here." And then he starts moving towards me, and I'm thinking, "Oh, he's coming for me. I better finish up." But my laser was going, and I needed one more cycle to finish. And I was like, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up!" And I started feeling like a sense of panic and dread and excitement. And then my cycle finished, and I flew off, and I was like, evaded that guy, and then I turned in my rocks, and I realized he was just doing the same mission I was. He was in a little frigate, but that powerful feeling of cat and mouse, being the mouse, is PvP too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, when I participate in PvP, it's not to hunt. I'm not the hunter, I'm the prey, and I like to get away. And I take it personally if I get killed. I am offended if I get killed. So my whole experience with pirates has been to avoid them, to understand them, to know their techniques, and to get past them. And but I was never a pirate. It's just not my style of playing the game. But I totally admire them, especially the ones with honor. I thought that's a step above. It's a step above because at that point, if you're embracing the idea of not putting a check mark on your kill board or of griefing somebody that you just lied to, like if you have that kind of character, I'm interested in that. What prevents you from being uncivilized?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So have you ever been ransomed before? Have you
Oh
ever
yeah.
had so have you ever
Famously so.
famously so.
Yeah. I'll tell you this story. It's so if you've ever heard I'm Matterall, by the way, it's because that was a caricature of a conversation I had with Snuff, who'd caught me on a fake Fortizar in a jump freighter with an 11 billion ISK module in my hull and nothing else. So it's a very embarrassing catch for me. And I'll tell you that whole story. But this is also because, yeah, anyway, I'll just tell you the story. I was in Talking In Stations at that point. Talking In Stations was part of Imperium News Network, and I was a big deal there. I'm kind of a big deal around here, I would think to myself. And so when one of my staff members was in a wormhole group, and she was getting evicted, and it was a big famous eviction fight that was going on. This is the fight of Hydra, and that's the name of the wormhole. And this was Pospey that was being evicted by like Hard Knocks and other groups. I think it was Hard Knocks, or actually it might have been a different group. So let me just say somebody was evicting her. And I thought like, hey, she's one of my crew members, and she's important to me, so I should flex. And I said, let me see if I can get some people to help defend your space. And so I contacted people and said, hey, and I mostly knew nullsec people, but I was like, hey, can you scramble a fleet, or can you put together a fleet, please, and help out one of my people? And they're like, you're asking a lot, because nullsec guys don't do well in wormholes. They got to stay there for 3 days. They got to guard the entrances. And it's not that fun for them. So you're asking a lot. And I was just like, of course I am. Why didn't I realize that? So I thought, I can't do that. Take that off the list. And But I was really mad because I was like, I do so much for you guys. I surface all your, your faces on our program. I talk to you about what you're doing. I promote you. I do all these other things, and you can't do me a favor of helping defend one of my crew members. I was totally uncalibrated as to what my actual position was. So then I was already in a bad mood. So I start doing things fast, and I was like, look, I can't get you a fleet, sorry. But what I can do is I can get you whatever you need material-wise. So I became a gun runner, and I like this because it was kind of role-play-ish. So I packed a jump freighter or two, actually, full of battleships. They were the Matteralls, right? At the time, they were like what you wanted to have. Lots of damage, fast, could, small mass could get them into a wormhole easy, that kind of stuff. So I packed them in, but I needed a freighter to put them into. So I was like, where are my jump freighters? Oh, well, I was an NC dot at the time, so they were in tribute. So I started moving characters around really fast, and I didn't realize jumped an NC dot character in a jump freighter to a fake Fortizar because I had parked in it, and I lived in the neighborhood, so I knew it. But since I'd been gone, they'd put a fake one up, and it was called the exact same thing. And I parked in it, and it looked right. Everything looked correct. So I undocked and lit the Sino, jumped to it, try to park my jump freighter, and it wouldn't let me park. And I thought, I was hitting my computer like, what's going on here? What's wrong with this? Why isn't it working? I had no idea that I had jumped to a fake one. And sure enough, a Rorqual lands next to me, and I'm like, well, this is unexpected. What are you mining around here? It goes clueless. And then it grapples me, and I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Stop.
This is a legit free port. And so they start, then all of a sudden I see ships coming in, and I thought something's wrong here. So I say, I looked, and it was Snuff, of course. And I'm thinking Snuff's going to kill me because they kill everything. They literally would eat their own tail if it got in front of them. So at that point I decided I'm dead. So what I'll do is try to stall for a little bit of time. So I'll engage this guy in conversation, and I'll act as pompous as possible to keep them going because that's gold to them. And so I'm like, look here, why have you got me trapped? I demand you let me go. And I started to really lay into it. And in the meantime, I'm really quickly kill a bee, get a fleet over to this place, as quickly as possible. Because, NC dot's one jump away. And Killaby writes me back a few minutes later, and he's like, what are you in? And I said, a jump freighter. And he goes, I can't get a fleet to save a jump freighter. Just die quietly is what he was saying, And I'm already halfway into my speech with this guy. But then I decided psychologically I had an opportunity to do a couple things. One was to, first of all, I was kind of savoring the moment. But one was to basically see. Remember, I talked to you about how much I like pirates that were honorable.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, we want 5 billion from you, basically. And I thought, I'm going to pay that because to me it was 5 cents, right? It wasn't a lot of money to me. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of money to a lot of other people. And I kind of knew that was the second aspect of wow, this is a chance for me to flex and show that I have a ton of wealth, So I was like, fine, here's 5 billion. And what I wanted to do was two things. One is to have the topic of, yes, honorable pirates are dead, because I just paid this guy a lot of money and he still didn't let me go. And then the second thing was to show everybody that wasn't a lot of money to me, which was kind of conceited and a little bit arrogant. But, at this point, I'm very mad. I'm defended. And I already told you, I don't like being killed. But I paid the money and I said, look here, young man, I work very closely with Matani. And, you are in the Imperium. And so you must respond to Matani. And the other thing was to also show Snuff didn't give a shit about the Imperium, didn't give a shit about the Matani, but to kind of show Snuff's not really in the Imperium. They're just kind of borrowing, some crabbing land so they could build some supers, which they happen to be using today. This is back in 2017, I think. And basically, so I say, that, and then I say, well, look here, if that doesn't work for you, the person that owns all these free ports, I work very closely with him too. His name is Pfeiffer. And at this point, I'm kind of role playing. And by now, I got the answer. Killer Bee's not sending anybody to save me, whatever. And so then they're like, okay, we'll let you go. Just jump out of the freighter. And I was like, no, you'll have to kill me. I'm just going to die in the freighter because I'm not going to give you that, because that's just embarrassing, right?
Right.
Paying $5 billion and saying, blah, it's just a small fee. It shows you're wealthy, but just undocking and having them steal your jump freighter, that's just embarrassing. Doesn't matter how rich you are. So there was a no-win. So I was like, all right, just kill me. So they did. And when they killed me, I looked at the kill mail, and there was this 11 actually billion ISK damage control module that was on my Titan. And the funny thing was, I put it on the Titan, and then I quickly realized that it didn't work with the fit that NC was running with. So I took it off and put it somewhere. So I just left it in the cargo of that one jump freighter that I thought was empty. But when I, Titan's all configured, I realized I couldn't find that module because it wasn't in my inventory. It was in a freighter. So for about 5 months, I was really mad at myself for misplacing a 11 billion ISK module. So I'd been running with that guilt for a long time. So when it blew up and then there it was, my immediate reaction was, oh, there it is. Oh, thank God I didn't lose it. I was thrilled that I finally found it and I didn't lose it. So I wasn't an idiot after all. That was my happy ending about that. So yes, pirates caught me, they ransomed me, and then they didn't do what they said they would do.
Yeah, I do feel like that is the nature of Eve these days. I did have the one time that I ended up ransoming was when I was on a gate with a hurricane, and it was at the bare minimum, and the money was sent over seconds before he died. And so I definitely gave his money right back to him. He was pissed. He was like, cool. It was like 200 million or something like that. And I was totally gonna let him go, but I wasn't gonna let him go until that money got to me. And I was literally in structure, and he was literally in structure as well. And I'm like, I don't know if I can even kill you at this point. So I'm gonna keep this going on, because if I let off at all, then that's the end of it. You're out of here and not gonna pay me the money. And so, but he paid me the money, and so I shot it right back over to him. Was like, totally sorry.
I shot it right back over to him.
Here you go.
Yeah, well, that's nice of you. That is honorable.
I try. That's if I give a ransom, that's definitely. I don't normally ransom because it's hard to be in a position these days, especially where I fly in Tama and stuff. It just there's too much going on. I'm just gonna get the kill and go, and there's nobody really flying industrial ships that I'd be.
Yeah, and there's a real problem in that negotiation. It's just not. I've actually written to CCP about it, saying you need better choices. A person should be able to enter into a contract, so there's no sneaky stuff. You're look, we want you have 5 seconds to initiate a contract, and that contract comes up. The money gets filled in, they hit enter, and now you're paid, and then you can let them go. So that way there's less guesswork as to what's going on. I think it would be kind of interesting to be able to do something like that.
I think it'd be hard to implement, but it would be, and there would be always a workaround to a certain degree, because I could see everybody that signs onto the contract, automatically goes to, not being able to, gets jammed or whatever to that one character. So they can't lock that character anymore. But then you could always just not have somebody sign the contract and, have that guy, and it would only last for 5 seconds or whatever, enough to zoom away. But then you also have, oh, I got away, but then I caught you on the next gate. So
oh, one other story, by the way, that guy that caught me in the jump freighter after he killed me, by the way, I was on an alt, so nobody knew who I was. I could have died quietly and that just would have been nothing, but I was like, hey, I'm Matterall, right? Matterall, by the way. And so of course he made a t-shirt, and he went to FanFest, and he was wearing the t-shirt with the whole picture and dialogue, but I didn't make it to that FanFest. Otherwise I would have signed it for him. Which is weird, because people ask me for my autograph at conventions, And I'm like, well, my real name is this, and that's what I know how to sign. I don't know how to sign Matterall. I mean, you could sign Matterall and it would be just as skilled, it's not actually my signature. So that was kind of weird. But there was a second jump freighter incident. I'll make this one shorter. But I was, again, doing things very quickly through alts, and I ended up flying a jump freighter from Amar into the south on the wrong character. This was actually an NC character again. And I had just joined, so this was a long time ago. And I got caught on a gate, and I'm thinking, how did I get caught? I'm in high sec. And I had all my stuff because I was moving my stuff, some stuff to a certain deployment. So I had about 8 billion ISK at the time. It was a lot. And somebody catches me, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I realize I'm in the wrong character. And so he starts shooting me. And I was just like, God, I just am going to this deployment. I'm going to get yelled at by my corp. This is awful. And so I get up and I, hit my foot on the table. I hit my arm on the table and take off because I think the doorbell was ringing as I was getting shot. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. So then I answer the door. I have a full 10-minute conversation with somebody at the door. And I come back expecting to be in the station, and I'm still floating in space in my jump freighter, but I'm all red bars to the very sliver of the end. And the guy's hailing me, communicating with me. And he's all, hey, if you eject, I will, it'll spare you the embarrassing kill mail, NC dot. And that made me think, like, is this an NC dot guy? Is that why he's sparing me? Like, because they hunt too. So he might be killing my character. And so I was like, wait a minute. If I undock, and I tried it. And so as soon as I undocked, the entire jump freighter just exploded. And I was like, what just happened there? And I had figured out that when I jumped out of my jump freighter, my skills no longer applied to the ship. And so it was so my skills were the only thing keeping that thing alive. So when I ejected from that ship had a negative hull. It was just exploded, and all my stuff exploded too. And I looked and there was no kill mail. So there's no record anything ever happened. And NC dot never knew that I lost a jump freighter full of stuff. It's weird. So here's my tip to people. If you're in a ship and it's a big enough ship where skills apply, and you eject at the very last second, it will self-destruct the ship instantly, and you will not see a kill mail. Sorry, pirates.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved into getting into talking in stations and creating such an awesome podcast that's kind of
Thank you.
grown to be what I as I feel is like one of the cornerstones of Eve Media that's out there, that at least I see.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, you know what it's like to put on a podcast and to do it live and do it with cameras. It's a whole different game than it used to be. So what drove me to it was I started before all this, when it was just a podcast. So you would record on a mic, and you could do it any time of the day. And then you would take that and you would produce it. You'd cut out the silent parts, and you clean up the sound and all that sort of stuff. It was just a natural extension of what I was already doing before that. I was actually a writer for first freelance, then Eve News 24. I was also an editor at Eve News 24, so I was building up other writers. Sometimes I would write articles for other people, just give them the article. They'd earn the money. I didn't really care because I just liked writing about the game. So I was just going through. I wrote like 150 articles in a few months. And I would write stuff that was not just like, hey, here's my opinion on, how to destroy a jump freighter. It was more like, here's the origin story of the Alliance tournament was my first article. It's like absolutely
very good story,
detailed stuff, with research done, and I'd scour archives and find the video of the actual incident. And it was like, I think when I turned in my first few articles, the owner of Eve News 24 was like, oh my God, it's a historian. It was like, and I realize now what he meant. It meant like, this guy's a researcher. Mm-hmm. This guy looks into things. He doesn't just say, here's my opinion. He like looks into it and he keeps his opinion out. And that's a whole different type of writer in Yvonne. So that was, I started writing a lot, and then I thought I had a lot of fans from Imperium side, or they CFC, they were in Imperium, I think, at the time. But I had a lot of fans from there. They would write like, "I'm Imperium, but I write," and that was unusual at Eve News 24. So I started feeling like, oh, I see it. It's because I write about Eve things, and everybody can find that interesting. I'm not coming from a perspective of like my tribe. And so a lot of people started to like it that were not typical, readers. CCP started to like it. They noticed it. They invited me to speak at eVegas, which I did like 3 occasions. And it was like I was helping them kind of promote the game. And that felt very natural because I really liked this game. And I think at that point, there was a moment where I was like, let me talk to this, like, the Matani. And I always end up bringing up his name because he's kind of pivotal in a lot of things historically, but also in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Because all I wanted to do was say, hey man, you're in charge. What's that like? What's that like emotionally, and as a human, as one human to another, because I'm an adult and you're an adult, like, what's it like to have so many people depend on you? And so I approached him. Well, he did something. He heard my name and he was behind me in line. We were getting in, and he's like, Matterall, I know that name. You're the only good writer at Eve News 24, which cracks me up because it's exactly the way he's very precise in his language. In other words, he's like slapping Eve News 24, but he's kind of buttering you up at the same time. And it's his way of working, because he's trying to poach you, but he's not going to say anything. He's basically saying like, hey girl, your boyfriend's ugly, but you're beautiful, like, and that's kind of how he works. So I thought that was interesting. But when I tried to talk to him later in the convention, he wanted nothing to do with nothing. So it was like, in fact, he took the opportunity to literally berate me in front of other people. I was sitting there saying like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute about, the stuff that you do and all that? And he goes, you're from Eve News 24. And then he just like started laying into me, totally performance of power kind of stuff. And people were walking over and they would turn around and walk away because, we're, engaged in not a very friendly discussion. And it was very unusual at a fan fest to see people arguing. It just doesn't happen. Everybody's friendly and everybody's fine. But I considered it a performance of power, and I didn't take it personally at all, because a bit later, I'm walking out and I'm on my way home and Entourage is not around. So I'll ask him one more time. And so I said like, hey, I just wanted to ask you. And he's like, he basically said like, well, what will it take for you to work with us, kind of thing. So I think he wanted to recruit me. And I was like, well, I see that there are people from the other side that want, that like my writing, and I would like a new to build it, talk to people that I don't often reach. And so I would consider it, but I need to meet with you on a different level. Like, it can't be this, I'm on one tribe and you're on the other kind of thing, because I'll never get past that. But if, we're more similar in real life, then maybe we can meet up here, and then the game's just a game, and then I can work for you. Mm-hmm. And because I still have a lot of Gurgoon from, not liking them from 2008 on. So yeah, we talked politically. We're very alike politically, and so it's like, okay. And that's kind of how I went over to INN. But I only meant to write like 4 or 5 articles and then kind of retire. And then I got asked to be the news editor, the news chief there for Eve. And then I was like, good, I can build this place. And I did build it. I felt that I recruited. There were people there, but it was very, very weak at the time. So it was TMC still, but it was very weak at the time on the writing part of it. There's a few good writers, but they were just kind of burned out. So I spent the next 2 years just building up TMC. I transferred it over to INN to make it appeal. I recruited in writers from, I got Gevlin Goblin to write on INN. I got Iwan Isk to write for INN to make his announcements on INN. The Talking in Stations show was a natural development of the writing part of INN, which was which was me and the people that I had brought in. So it was a natural conversion into taking all that knowledge and urgency and putting it in a podcast form so that people could hear it too. Because podcasts all of a sudden were making a comeback. They weren't that popular.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember that, right? Like they weren't.
Yeah, there was definitely a time period where, that there was not a lot of like, I don't know. It kind of depends. A lot of my friends are drivers, people who like have to go places in order to do their tech work and stuff like that. So like they'll be on the road for hours. So some of my friends are like been into podcasts ever since they started driving type stuff. But I didn't really know about podcasts until, I don't know, I feel like it was 2015 when I really started to get, it was Eve was really your, it was Fly Recklessly or Reckless or what was that? There was like a...
Yeah, Fly Reckless was one, but it might have been gone. You're probably Hydra.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know.
But in any case, it was Eve Podcasts is when I really started looking into podcasts, and then my wife got me into a lot of different kind of like Darknet Diaries, and there's some really cool podcasts out there that's all about like hackers and stuff like that and what they do.
Oh, wild. Yeah, but it made a comeback, didn't it? Because that podcast has been around a long time, and I don't know what happened, but I think it might have to do with Ira Glass and other radio voices. Like I used to listen to Joe Frank in the Dark in Los Angeles, and that was unbelievable stuff. But that was like in the 90s, and that was all radio. But I think radio came into podcasts, and that's probably what happened.
Yep.
A lot of radio programs.
Absolutely. I think that it's much better to do podcasts than radios, especially if you have a base. Now, if you're starting from scratch like me, I mean, if I could get on a radio show, I'd probably be more popular than what I'm doing here. But it is, once if you have any popularity, or you build that up by doing kind of like what you've done, you can definitely get to a lot more people about what you're talking about than radio these days. It's just, video killed the radio star, not really, but the podcast and the internet killed the radio star. I think that's what really ended up happening.
Yeah, it's really a strange twisting of technology, and especially the pipes, right? The communications there, the bandwidth is there now to have a video instead of sound. But anyway, the idea was that the writing from what I was doing at INN rolled into the show where we could talk about what was going on, and we would point at the map and we would say, circle things and say, here's where they're headed, this big move op is going, and we talk about, we basically would do the news, but it was a round table of like Eve news people, and that's what we started. It wasn't the original intent, but it's what it formed into when it started, and that was 5 years ago, like in 2 weeks.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I love how you have that kind of format of bringing in different people to talk about different things, but you still have like this large round table of people discussing stuff, which is I don't see a lot of that. And one of the interesting things a while ago we had another podcaster on here from Mage the Podcast. He does a lot of stuff, but when he came on, it was me and my co-host talking to him, and he's like, oh, I'm not used to talking to two people at the same time. Usually, it's this one-on-one with the podcast. And I always found it interesting that your podcast is almost always like 4 to like 6, 7, people that you'll have a lot of people on there at once usually.
Yeah, I'm interested in points of view.
Yeah, and the competing, like doing what Crossfire couldn't ever dream about doing.
Yeah.
Bringing two opposing sides together and getting some substance, I feel like a lot of the times.
Yeah, and making some news sometimes, which was really odd, because we had like Scion, who was the leader of the diplomacy of the Imperium. At the same show, we had Eat, who was the owner of the Iwan Isk, which is basically the Iron Bank of EVE Online at the time, which is full of money and could hire as many mercenaries as it wanted to. And so you have the Empire versus the mercenary financier on the same show. And here I am trying to broker a peace deal. I was like, what's it going to take for you to tell the mercenaries to stand down and Is that something you can, we're actually brokering this deal on the air. And at the same time, I'm wrestling with my mic because my mic is terrible. So it's like all these things going on at the same time. But that was funny. And that would be like making news. But most of the time, it's like, hey, man, what do you think about this? And we don't ask the people who've been around for 20 years to comment. We ask people who are from different strata of EVE Online so that we can get a full idea of like the different ways of appreciating something. That's kind of where it's at. And that's how I got started. It rolled in from writing to being in charge of editing news to then using the mediums and evolving with it. And so what you see in Talking in Stations is basically a living discussion that goes all the way back to when we were just writing articles and talking.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do in EVE these days, besides your Talking in Station stuff? Is there anything that you're currently active in doing?
Actually, no. Yes and no. I'm in like 3 or 4 different things now that are I'm just like tipping my toe into it. At this point, I've done a lot of the things in EVE Online that that most people would have some kind of aspirational goal. Like I've kind of met all the aspirational goals. I've actually surpassed them in ways that I didn't even want to surpass them. So what I do now is look for novelty more than anything else. And for me, I've joined a mining gang in Hamatar space that is attached to Ashra Khan, a faction war group. So these are like, how can I put this? It's like oppressed people that were slaves to the Amarian. I like their whole like, resist the power kind of thing going on there. And these guys are called the Damn Fam, and I'm kind of hanging out with them, not as much as I could, but I joined their mining competition the other day, and it's so funny. I joined the mining competition, and I was like, I think that's the first time I've seen a moon rock, get ripped off the moon and start floating towards the refinery to be blown up. Mm-hmm. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that real time, like in real life. So I was freaking out. I was like, I've been missing this. I know all about it. I've reported about it. I know every detail about it, but I've never seen it in a while. So
I just did it recently too, and I was like, I had that feeling too. I was like, wow, like I see videos of this, but this is my giant laser going and cracking open a huge moon. Like, this is ridiculous. And literally we crack the moon, and I go, this isn't the moon goo I was looking for. In fact, there's no moon goo here. I put it on the wrong moon. Oh well, we got we got other things.
Shot the wrong moon. Yeah, but there's that. I'm also looking at wormhole space again. I was in one of the earlier wormhole groups when it first came out, and it was kind of like it was an undisciplined place. Later, it's got so professionalized. It's amazing what they do there. But when I was in wormholes in 2009 when they came out, for about a year and a half, and I was never any good at it. I couldn't scan. So it's only now that I'm starting to look at going back into that. There's a couple other things. There's an industrial group that I was a part of for a short time, and I've been invited to a Spanish group in Providence that speaks only Spanish, and I'm thinking I would go there just to kind of speak in Spanish all day.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, why not increase my vocabulary a bit.
Yeah, that definitely can help out a lot. I wish I could say that I want to learn Korean right now really bad, because I just joined up with the Nissawa cartel recently, who lives out of like Nissawa and in the Tama Black Rise area. And if I could learn, I have Google Translate. Helps out a whole bunch, and them knowing English,
that helps out a lot.
Cuts out a lot of the barriers. But it's like there's a lot of chatter that I have to like, and I'm like, man, this would be a good opportunity for my life to be telling me, you should learn a second language. You tried German for 4 years, and das ist gut is about that's all I got. Yeah, can't even say anything else. It has to be all English, the German accent. Das ist gut.
What is that one? Schadenfreude or Schadenfreude? Delighting in other people's misery. Whatever.
Ooh, I don't know that. Yeah.
I don't even know that.
It was like my German teacher literally gave me an E for effort. She was like, you tried. If I dropped you in Germany, you'd figure it out. but
Yeah.
you have other things going on in your brain.
Yeah, try Korean.
Yeah, that'll.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, is there? I know that we kind of got cut off in the middle, like just before we were kind of starting. Is there any questions that you had for me that you wanted to talk about? I know you had a couple things you were asking me about.
Yeah, one of the things I was really impressed by was I went and looked at some of your catalog and stuff, and I just like how you guys seem very natural. And you have, by the way, your artwork of the Wolfman and the vampire. Like, who did that?
So that was a Fiverr. I went out
Okay.
and just kind of was like,
So
okay, I
somebody
need
just
some
drew that.
artwork, and I found a guy that kind of had some stylistic stuff that I liked. So I was like, hey, this is, I want a werewolf, a vampire, a hunter, and a mage sitting at a table rolling dice, with some tabletop kind of stuff going on, and
And a revolver.
and just to make sure that
It must
everybody
be the
knows
hunter.
it's
The silver bullets.
just in case shit gets down, like we gotta.
Yeah. Somebody contest the dice roll. He must be the dungeon master or whatever. But what I liked is, from you guys is that you guys were really into other things. It's not just EVE Online. You are into, or you interview people that are from different spectrums of this imaginary world kind of environment. So I thought that was super interesting. What's that like?
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting to getting involved into, because when we kind of got involved in this, the first episode of Crossing Darkness is like, okay, we're running a Gen Con event. It's this huge 40-person, 4 tables, 10 people at each table. We'll have 10 vampires, 10 werewolves, 10 hunters, and 10 mages that are all going to be fighting the epic darkness. Is Madison under siege, and it's like the end of the world, and everybody's out of this world of darkness type of game that we kind of said. So we were like, okay, let's just make sure that when people come to the game, they kind of have like an idea of what's going on, because we were doing it as like a one shot, but a one shot that will continue next year. You don't have to play even the same character next year, or come next year, but we're going to continue the story using all the stuff that you guys did, and say, okay, in year 2, based upon what happened in year 1, we have a new one shot for you. And so it was about year 2 that we started making and wanting to get into the idea of making sure that people knew what was going on. So when they arrived at the game, we even had like a, tell us if you arrive at the game and you give us this code word, we'll give you like some special stuff to your character for listening through the entire like 2-hour podcast that we did that was focused on that. So, but it ended up like being kind of one of these things that we started running out of stuff to do, and we kind of took a break for a while. We kind of picked it back up, and we were like, let's talk about different books and different settings and different stuff. But I was like, what would be better is getting other people onto our podcast and have them talk about all the stuff that they know. So I just started reaching out to one of my first guests that I had on was Rick Hines. I ran into him at a convention. I was like, hey, we run a podcast. You want to come on sometime and talk about the stuff that you're doing with his, whole world that he was creating, and all the tabletop games and all the, LARPs and stuff that he was running. So he came on to the show. And then when we started back up, I, brought him back on, and it's just been really interesting meeting the whole community because I've been trying to, for the most part, for a lot of Crossing Darkness, we've been trying to hit up other podcasters, other people that are storytellers and stuff like that. So we've been just kind of posting on Facebook and stuff, and just trying to be like, hey, if you're interested in telling us about what you do for storytelling, if you play Dungeons and Dragons or Vampire the Masquerade, we're heavily into like the World of Darkness stuff, but we've been kind of opening up to just more general gaming, and just trying to get into the concept of just trying to grab up all different types of people. We don't need you to be famous to come on here, or even have any reason to come on other than you just want to talk about games. You like Dungeons and Dragons, you play a whole bunch of it, you got a bunch of stories from you and your buddies, that you just want to get out into the ether, and this is a portcullis for you to shout into, and when we're happy to broadcast that for you.
Yeah, it's really about, I kind of feel like we're kindred spirits, because you're interested in other people, you're interested in their stories, you're interested in their perspectives, and it's all around these virtual worlds and imaginary worlds. It's I guess it's role playing, but it's also there's a lot of truth in role playing. A lot of times people put on masks to unleash their true self, and I feel like this is a really interesting place to meet people and to find out like what motivates them and stuff. So in that sense, I feel like we're kind of on the same path, and I liked how you guys are not just Eve but other things as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel that as well. I really like a lot of, and I kind of have taken influence to a certain degree, definitely from what you've done and a lot of other Eve podcasters and just in general other podcasts and stuff. But it's been, it's something that I'm like, I was talking to one of my buddies. I was like, I should have got into talk show host business like when I was younger. And then I thought about it for a second, like, there's no way I could have got into talk show host. And he's like, not with that attitude. And I'm like, well, yeah, because no, I mean, with the internet now and podcasting and stuff, I can just shout into the ether and, some people listen and that's cool. But I don't even know how I would start to become, I guess I'd have to be like a comedian or something first, is all the talk show hosts that I know.
They all start different ways.
Right.
Letterman started as a weatherman, so it's all different ways. Entertainment business in general is people just come at it from different directions. Wes Craven is a director I used to work with when I first started in Los Angeles, and he was an high school English teacher. And he became an editor. So he was an editor for film, and I mean like cutting film and stuff. And one day the director quit. And so the producer's like, well, what do we do now? Hey, you look like you know what you're doing. Why don't you finish this film? And so Wes Craven finished, I think it was Last House on the Left. When he started out as the editor, he ended up ending up as a director. And that's just how his career started. So it's really, entertainment kind of picks you to do it. But these days it's so democratic because we have the technology to put our message out, and we have the capability of having people find us not in real time. So somebody can look at this a year later and say like, oh, here's an old interview. I don't know who these guys are, but they're talking about stuff that's funny and interesting. And I love that aspect. It's like you're leaving treasures behind on a path that somebody may walk down someday. But for us, it's that creation.
I always find it interesting when somebody goes back and checks out like our first episode, which is like our, most popular episode, because it's just, like that's, you see our podcast, you're like, oh, well, what's that first episode that I always cringe a little bit because I'm like, that first episode.
Not that one. Yeah. We're just working things out.
That's not a representation of this podcast anymore.
Yeah, we're totally different. I feel like the first 4 years were all practice for like the 5th year of Talking in Stations. Like we made so many errors, and we benefited from so many people who helped fix up the whole thing, that if we look professional and sharp and like, wow, this is so easy for them, it's because we've made all the errors that you're going to 4 years. We've made all those, and that's why we're here now. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's it's an interesting path for me. It's one of the things with me was I went from like, okay, I'm gonna, like you said, cut it and like get all of, like check the audio, make sure that's all good, and like record it ahead of time and put it out on a podcast later. And that was all like the beginning of Crossing Darkness. And when we stopped doing it, it was because there was so much to it. There was so much editing just to get one episode out a week.
Yeah.
Was like we were spending hours, and there was arguments about who's doing editing and stuff like that, of like this needs to be better done and da da da. So when we started back up, I was like, fuck it, we're doing it live, and that's it. And that's it. We're just gonna cut it from whatever the fuck happens. I don't care about pauses and ums and ums. I just want a natural flowing conversation with a human being, and we can just talk about whatever is cool, and try and keep it focused on gaming. But I do love how you seem to have a very you analyze humans very interestingly, and I enjoy some of the breakdowns that you kind of just have on your kind of point of view on how humanity reacts and acts based on what's happening. And a lot of it's of course in the Eve context, but it's always interesting that you seem to be a person that has the ability, like you said, to be a researcher. You've not only have you just like I'm a person that I like researching. I wish I could do it better, but I'm just an in the moment human. Like I just take whatever's coming to me and I kind of just go with my wits roll on everything instead of my intelligence. But you seem to be able to mix intelligence and wits in a way that's quite impressive.
Well, thanks you. Actually, it's EVE Online also specifically is hard to research because it's easy and hard. Because it's easy because it's digital, right? So there's a lot of digital footprints that you can trace. But a lot of the stuff has subtext, and then you have subtext. Like what was the idea here? Wait a minute, you mean they were actually trying to do this? So it was just a manipulation? And then you think, oh, wait a minute, it was a double cross, like there's just so many layers of it. And then you have a real delicate balance between what's real, what was true, and what was revisionist history after the fact, Like, oh yeah, I did this, this guy built a whole bank. I can't really get into it because I just don't know the details. Other people might. But he builds this whole bank and does all this stuff, becomes so much work that he's like, forget it, I'm just cleaning everybody out. And he steals it all and says, oh, it's all a big scam. And I'm thinking, no, it wasn't. You tried, you got fatigued, and then you decided to make it this master plan so that nobody would be like that mad at you because, that's what happens in EVE. These master plans come true. It's like, no credit for that one. Yeah. Like if you want credit, you got to like show your work that I meant this heist to go the way it did, which is what was so beautiful about it's called Murder Incorporated, right? That's the article that just came out. And it happened in 2005. It was written about 2 years later, 2007. And think about that. Something happens in 2005. It's written about 2 years later. And that article was called Murder Incorporated. And it's brilliant. It brought a lot of people to the game, and it kind of redefined and gave life to EVE Online way past what it might have without that article.
Pretty sure I remember reading that article.
Yeah, it was a beautiful heist. It's sexy as hell. Like it just had everything in it. And it was all pre-planned and executed on a certain command word in COM. And it was like just brilliant. And you get credit for that. That's amazing. And that's what inspires everybody to come to EVE Online and say like, I can do that, I think. Let me try. And that's why this game is so professional. It's like totally next level planning and execution and stuff.
Yeah, no, I found that to be really interesting because I live in Madison, Wisconsin. So there's a lot of EVE players here.
That city's amazing.
We are 77 square miles surrounded by reality. You guys all get to play in reality. That's fine. We get to live in a magical alcove of mages and vampires and werewolves.
Elfland.
I swear to God that if I threw on like a costume that was like a full werewolf costume and just walked down State Street, I would just get people waving to me and just like like I mean, besides hurting people or something, like Madison's very welcoming kind of place. And so there's Goomp that happens, or did happen here, twice annually. So I got to meet up with a lot of the bigger people and kind of hang out with them and see, kind of what it's interesting to see them in the real life, and just also to see how much planning happens inside of the real life. Like you just see, and how much it's like, okay, we're not going to do any planning. We literally have to set aside a time that like nobody can talk. If you talk about EVE, you take a shot. Like get out of your head, right? Like so yeah, it's always interesting to see the the backdrop of the community of EVE, and that's something that's kind of kept me going in EVE quite a bit. Unfortunately, with COVID and everything that's been going on, there hasn't been as much activity or any really in Madison as of late during that. But I'm interested to see how when things come back alive in the universe, to hang out with people and just talk about EVE Online, once a month. Again, it's always been a blast just to all the different types of people that you can meet that kind of just come into this game or into this world, and really cool people.
some quality professionals and some unsavory characters too. Like I've run into some really unsavory. It's like there's nothing exciting about that. That's just ugly, you know?
Right.
But I've run into many more brilliant, astoundingly brilliant people. I've worked in a lot of things where I run into talented people, and I won't lie, they're not a lot, but EVE Online definitely has some people that are just, you can see that spark, like they are just next level thinkers.
Yeah.
And, you can tell they grasp things quickly, they process them quickly, they're able to look at things from different views quickly. Like they're the real thing. So if you're in EVE Online and you're being competitive and you're playing against other people, you're playing against some of the smartest gamers out there. Older guys too, right? Like,
yeah, no, the Eve's population is much, like I was thinking about it a little while ago, is like a lot of like teenagers at this point. Is I've been playing the game for 15 years, so I literally have to be in my 30s in order to have played this game for 15 years, and that just blows my mind, where I'm
yeah,
like,
right?
wait a minute, how old am I actually? Oh damn, I'm getting up there.
Yeah.
Which actually, I don't mind that too much. I'm one of those humans that's like, I can't wait to be the old guy shaking my stick and with all the cool technology all around me, get off my lawn, put the visor on and just go into EVE Online virtually.
Go back to your work. Well, I think about it, and a lot of the really good FCs start out at, really young, sometimes a little too young, but young teenagers, and they're really good at video games, and so they are really good at FCing and stuff. But at a certain point, you have 15-year-olds yelling at 50-year-olds to get in line, like get in line or we'll blow you up. And the 50-year-old's like, okay, hold on a second, let me find my return key or something. And so where do you see that in the world? Not very many places. So it's a really interesting dynamic. But I find that the leaders of men are all older, and they're established, and they are charismatic in real life. You don't become a leader of a group if you're a flunky that has behavioral issues or whatever. You have to have a certain attraction and charisma and make tough decisions to lead groups. So those positions are usually filled by older people.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. And like Mintani has tons of charisma that just oozes out of that man. Like meeting him in person is always or hanging out with him and going, like I've played board games with him and like gone out to clubbing with him and stuff like that, and it's always just a blast.
Clubbing crew.
Back in the day when there were clubs.
Yeah, he did. I'll tell you a funny insight. But when I was sitting there in the chair I was sitting next to Scion. It was like a suite in Hollywood. It was a suite in, Las Vegas. And I hate Las Vegas, by the way, right? But so he comes over and he says, "We're going to go out tonight, and we want you to join us." And then he basically whispers in my ear, "Think very hard before you decide," or something like that. And I'm looking at him like, dude, I worked in Hollywood. Like, I'm not going out with you. There's nothing I'm going to see that's going to impress me, okay? Like, I worked in Hollywood for 15 years. I'm not going to go and hang out with you guys at party or whatever. So I drove home that night. I actually just wanted the interview. I was way more interested in the ordinary man than I was like the fantastique. But whatever. I found Scion to be really compelling. It was just like,
Scion's cool. I enjoy.
You know him, right? Probably.
Yeah. Yep. Because
he's up there.
Yep. I've played D&D and Mage the Ascension with him and stuff like that. Did some storytelling with him. He does some really cool D&D type stuff. He's a really cool guy.
See, that's why I honestly felt when you invited me to do this, I was like, okay, let me check them out. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, these guys are like the real thing. They're like role players, board gamers, or paper and pen people. And I thought, I don't deserve this invite. Like, I'm the wrong guy for this invite, because who needs this invite is like Caleb would like this invite. So I was like, hey man, you look at this. What do you think? I was going to say, do you want to go instead of, because you would be perfect, not me. And who is it at INN? That kind of stuff. I envy him for that. It is. I'm drawing a blank. He's one of the editors.
Starts with an A, I think.
Horrendous.
Yes, horrendous. Yep.
Yeah, who's like, in a weird way, in a weird way, I have to push him off because he gets pretty intense, and I think he, just cannot stand fools, so he doesn't like me very much sometimes. But in a weird way, I have this affinity for him because he reminds me of what you remind me of, which is like, embrace the like inner nerd kind of thing. Like it's okay to like play D&D, I played it, a lot of people played it, and it was a lot of fun. So I kind of feel like you guys, to me, are living in imaginary worlds, and you're not posing, and that's so refreshing. I love that, and that's why I think you guys to me were like, yeah, I'm gonna do that interview.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, thanks a lot. That's that's what we're trying to go for, is just, we want to be genuine and real, and just try and build up something that's, EVE Online is an aspect that's been a part of my life for 15 years, and I thought, let's do some fucking interviews on EVE Online. There's some cool and interesting people that are out there. So
you're really good at it. You're a soothing personality, right? And your equipment's all set up right, and you should do a lot more of this. This is great.
Yeah, that's the plan.
I'll help you.
Awesome. Well, that would be huge. Like, yeah, that's awesome.
We'll talk after the show. We'll see what we can do to help you out. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just something that has just been, like, I'm just like, I just want to talk to people, have fun, relax, don't need to, cause any, don't want to have sweat somebody or kind of put somebody on a hot seat. It's just like, here's a spotlight for you, but not the hot seat. It's like, I just want to come on and have some fun, and just talk about games in general. And gaming has just been such a center focus in my life. It's literally what saved my life in general. Like, it's what got me into computers. It's the reason why I have a good job these days, and I'm not just, doing, like, I'm literally one of those humans that can't do school. Like, my teachers loved me, humans love me, and then they present me with
pets like you?
Pets like me.
Pets like you?
Pets
Okay.
like me a lot. I love animals. I love humans. I think I love the bunch of you. Just a beautiful, beautiful world that we exist in, even though it's filled with darkness. Which is why I go to like games like World of Darkness and stuff like that. Is because we actually live in a pretty bright world. If you look at World of Darkness and you get into those, like, what if there were vampires and werewolves and other shit that was ruining our entire lives, like, and really controlling shit. Like, I'm a pretty happy peasant. So
yeah, Eve is dystopian too, right?
And Eve is a total dystopia to live in, and it's it's interesting because I got into like World of Darkness and stuff like that, and then they got bought up by CCP, but I was already into EVE Online before, and it was like my two worlds like merged together at one point, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be epic. Yeah.
Just like, oh no.
I'm not gonna go deep into that, but I'm sadly disappointed that we didn't get a lot of cool stuff that I was hoping for. But c'est la vie, that is the way that it is.
What did you think of, speaking of that, right? Because you have World of Darkness, which is a vampire genre, and it's merging in with CCP, and it looks like could be a good, sister product to EVE Online, where people are vampiric in EVE Online, and they could be vampiric in World of Darkness, but that doesn't pan out, because of business stuff. But then 2011 hits. What was your perspective on that shift? Because I think that is a real bend to the path of EVE Online. What do you think about 2011?
So remind me, what happened in 2011?
I'm sorry. Summer of Rage was 2011, which was Incarna came out, Walking in Stations.
Yes.
And it didn't deliver the way it was supposed to deliver. And people were like, and for what? We waited all this time, and for what? Get us back to spaceships. Just put us in space, balance the game, fix the broken parts. We don't want to know anything about this, walking around and dressing up in clothes or any of that.
I personally think that was a misstep by the community. I think that it was a miscommunication to a certain degree on CCP's part, to be like, we're gonna focus on this and not space station or space for a lot. We're gonna work on walking in stations and screw spaceship stuff for like a year and a half or whatever it was.
Right.
It was ridiculous
Long
to
time.
make that statement. And I think they know that, and they got that massive backlash from the community. But I think the backlash for the community was way too strong. I think that if I could go to Lodi Station in a tourist and sit down and have a beer with Joe Bain virtually,
Meet him in that outpost, right? Like,
right?
I'll meet you at that outpost.
I'll meet you at the Notorious Cantina in Lodi Station. Come and hang out with me. Buy, maybe 12 isk or whatever for a beer or whatever. Like have stupid, super cheap. And then you can make even
Yeah,
ones that are like a dollar of Plex or whatever. That it takes one Plex to get this special drug that'll make your screen all fuzzy and weird and stuff like that. And you can
vibrate your chair.
And the idea of, like, they had that whole, the cabin that you had, the captain's cabin. Now, if I could invite people into that would have been an expansion on that.
Huge. Yeah.
It's a question of how much money was it going to take and how much time and effort was it going to take for them to implement a full, can I go into a station with 100 other people, or how do you do that with JITA? Maybe JITA doesn't get doesn't get to be walking in stations, or has like multiple levels that are all the same. So you can instance that stuff out to a certain degree, because 1,000 people inside of a 3-dimensional environment, it's hard to do that kind of stuff. So I see that there were limitations, but there's a reason why there is only 10 or 5% women in this game. Comparatively to other MMORPGs that exist out there, women are gamers too. They're very big. They're 50% of the population. They dictate a lot of what should be going on, and EVE Online has never catered to that. And that was kind of their catering. And I think that's what needs to be done to really open up this kind of community. Like, we have a beautiful community. I think we already have that which a lot of just humans in general, men and women, are looking for, which is this really fun community to come and hang out with. There's certain aspects to the community you got to kind of get used to a certain degree. Like, nobody here likes whiners. Like the tears that come out of you for something happening to you is more likely to fuel people than it is to make them feel sympathetic to you. But when you figure out that, all it takes is me asking questions and being a little bit harder, thick-skinned on kind of the aspect of losing stuff, you can get just gifts of tons of stuff from people. Very generous community. I know I've given out millions upon millions of this to people.
Can you imagine if CCP did something that attracted female players? They all arrive, how they would be treated. It would be like Alaska welcoming a plane full of women, from the States. It would just be like, hey, let me show you around. I mean, they would just completely redistribute wealth immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I would think it would be super healthy. I think there would be more stuff on building stuff, on creating empires, on creating there's so much destruction in EVE, and there's so much focus on destruction in EVE. There needs to be a place of creation, and I thought that's what Walking in Stations was going to be. Was you at least got the NPC station that'll never blow up, and you'll have your room with all this cool trophies, and a room filled with dead corpses, and show off your corpse collection. You can go to the bar and hang out. You can go to the local market and find the shady drug dealer over in the corner that's like, hey man, I got the boost for you, man.
I got the boost. I love the idea of hitting a button and the door opens and there's a stack of bodies and then it closes and it's like,
or they all fall out and it's like, oh no, I gotta push that in there, get a little bit filled up in there.
This one belonged to Elise Randolph.
Right. It's got the full 3-dimensional, but they're kind of frozen a little bit, but it has a little bit of look when it kind of like some of the implant or whatever.
Yeah, decorate the place with anything that you collect. That would be awesome, I think. And then, I don't know. I feel the same way you do. And I mean, you put your finger on it. It really would have opened the game up to a different player with different sensibilities, different desires. And even I was like, I don't want to play EVE. It's just, you're just a spaceship. I can't really relate to that. I need an avatar body because that's what I played with in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of people that can't make that jump. Even if you story tell it, it doesn't work. You need to see your animated, third person point of view character to bond with it better.
And all I
I
can
really
say is
wish they'd
that
done that.
Earth of Beyond had walking in stations before Eve, before or after Eve, just after Eve released. I can't remember which came
It's
first,
before.
but it's like that was their first thing that they knew needed to be the core center of their game. Was you didn't do much when you walked on their stations. You got to see other people. You got to go get some missions. You could do a lot of, I think, some of your mission collection without going into a station. But they knew they needed that avatar for people to connect onto, and I do believe that removing that avatar completely, all we do is get a picture now, and taking the captain's thing and saying, well, nobody used it. It's like, well, why did nobody use it? You're asking the wrong question. You're saying, well, what can we do to improve our game? And they looked at, walking in stations and said nobody uses this, and instead of saying why did nobody use this, they just removed it from the game. And
Because
I think
they clearly use it in other games, right? So people will use avatars. So we know that people will use avatars. Is that what we're talking about?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't what is the reason why people wouldn't use their captain's quarter? Well, nobody else could see it. You couldn't interact with any other. You couldn't decorate it in any real way, shape, or form to personalize the environment.
So it didn't look any
to you.
different than what they were seeing on their computer.
Right. So there's many. It's not that the space itself was the problem. It was that the space wasn't in an interaction in any way, shape, or form, and didn't enhance the game in any way, shape, or form. So either you dedicate some time to it or you rip it out. And I feel like ripping it out was the wrong choice. But once again, I'm not CCP. I just feel like CCP does have a lot of money that they seem to be able to throw around on a lot of different projects that,
I kind of feel like they said, we're going to repair the game. And I almost felt like, hold on, we'll fix the game. We're listening to you. We'll be back. Watch this space. And they never came back.
Right.
Like, we're still waiting for that. And all we get now is balance, 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 balance. And it's like, I'm still waiting. So that probably talking in stations is almost a placeholder for waiting for other means of interaction that aren't spaceship pew 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 interactions. Because notice we don't do battles and talk about the ships and talk about what munitions were used or any of that kind of, because that's all.
You talk about the human
mechanics.
element of it.
Talk about the human element.
I mean, imagine if you could do talking in stations, sitting at a table, all of you in your avatars talking inside of an EVE Online station, and being able to actually, like, it just would feel more real,
Yeah. That's why I liked your picture there of the werewolf and the vampire and, all your logo, because when I thought, okay, I need a logo, my very first vision was almost what you drew right there, except it was space people. And the thing that you said that really reminded me of our core mission at TIS was, what if I could meet Joe Baines at an outpost out there somewhere? And that's exactly the mind vision I have in my head when I'm talking in stations. It's that outpost way out there, kind of on a border, maybe low sec. And it's a place where people meet and keep going, but they tell each other things as they're going. So you would meet Joe there for a drink and he'd be like, watch out for sectors, this or that. There's an infestation of, something or other. And it's just kind of like, this is the place that you trade information about what's out there. That's what TIS is.
Very nice.
That's how I thought it.
Absolutely.
That was the whole vision. Yeah.
What would be interesting is if like getting that as a physical kind of space, as getting a station for talking in stations where people could come and hang out and physically hang out with
in the game.
In the game. Well, yeah, physically, virtually.
I thought of that, but I was like, talking in stations puts down a station. How, it's like time to penis, that whole thing where a new mechanic comes in and how fast can people exploit it to make it look like a penis. And sometimes that's a matter of minutes, sometimes hours, but never days because it goes so fast. So talking in stations, put down a station, it's time for destruction kind of thing. It's like, I'll get war decked immediately and it'll get blown up. Probably. I don't
See,
know.
but what you could do is pick an NPC in Losec Station and be
That's
like, just
what they should do.
take that over and like, like Ladai
I
and
was going to do
Notorious.
that. It's a great idea. And I'm right there with you. I was going to do that. In fact, I was going to say, look, anybody wants to be a guest on TIS, you have to actually clone over to it or fly to it and park. And you got to log in and you got to be in the game while you're on this talk show. And then we're going to dress it up so that we're looking outside that station. And we're literally going to like role play it. Not role play it. I mean, you be yourself in real life,
Right,
but
right.
your character has to be in game. That way, if somebody sees talking in stations on and we say we're now in like Amatar, they could fly there to that system and like be in the same system with us. And that whole meta meets game, I don't know, communion to me appeals to me so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wanted to do that. The only problem is trying to get Elo Knight to fly to like Galente space is like nobody.
The thing about EVE Online that is kind of crazy and it will always blow me away no matter how long I've been playing this game is that the travel time in this game is insane. Like the idea that like most games it's like, oh, go to the local bazaar that's 5 minutes away maybe or whatever to get access to everything you need or teleport to wherever you want to go. And it's like EVE Online's like, no man, be ready for like just hours and hours of trip making and going, and especially when you first start the game and you're like, oh, I gotta buy this item, okay, I'm gonna go there, okay, I gotta buy this item now, okay, it's over in this area. You have no idea what a trade hub is and you're just like jumping from system to system to hobble together a ship.
Yeah,
that's the fondest memories I'll have on EVE Online.
Yeah,
just jumping, and it's a beautiful game though, luckily. Yeah. Going from system to system, especially in the very beginning, is just like, oh, this I could watch this.
Yeah, I can watch this. That's watchable. The two things there. One is it's a beautiful game. I remember watching a Storm Planet and just listening to the music, watching the Storm Planet as I was just doing, and I was like, I could do this all day long. And it's just such a amazing game to absorb in that way. But the other thing is I try to help a new player just mine something and sell it. And I realized how difficult it is to get around, like the concept of multiple systems and multiple trade hubs. You can go into the same system and go to the wrong trade hub, and then you're like, you're 3 hours into just trying to get a gun on your ship. It's just incredibly, difficult at first. So I think there's a lot of room to work there.
I do have to say they did improve it a lot. I feel like the fittings, the simulation, like before you couldn't simulate, you couldn't do a buy all, you couldn't do, this like right click on a assembled ship and be like, I want 20 of these Atrons to be my combat Atrons that I'll fly around and get blown up all day long. So I think they've done some definite major improvements. Having community fits that they have, they're not the best, but
have they put those in yet?
I believe that I'm almost 100% that they're in, because I see them.
Is there any content in there yet?
There's like, some. There's not.
Okay. I haven't seen it.
I don't
well,
know.
You remember EFT used to connect to Battle Clinic? I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
And that was community fits. And that was good because you could tap it. It would take you to the fit on Battle Clinic, and then you could read the notes of all the people correcting the fit. Yeah. So you could like get more information. And it was a really good crowdsourced way of
I don't know if it's quite community fit at this point. I think it's like the suggested fits that they have right now.
It's suggested and approved. It's not just anybody's fit. It's like suggested and approved by CCP. So and they're some pretty decent. I was like, oh, this Thrasher that they had was very similar to my cockbag Thrasher. It just had Tech 1 guns instead of Tech 2 guns and a little bit of tank that I would just rip off of there and throw. I just want to punch something in the face. That's what this shit is for. I remember my friend joined this EVE Online and he's like, hey, I just want a big gun. I don't mind paying for it. I just understand that about me. I want the biggest gun I can get. And I thought, you're not going to like this game.
Yeah. It's like, it's a little bit of a different game. The only time that I remember being very adamant on bigger is better was when I was like doing level 4 missions when I could barely get into like a battle cruiser, and I was like, well, if I could just get into the battleship hull, I'll use the stupid, medium guns on it, and I'll just have more hit points. That's all that I care. I just want to get through this goddamn level 4 mission without dying.
Yeah. That reminds me of if you have a child, you realize when don't have the words to express themselves, they don't have the concepts either. And you can see that. It's not that they can't find the word, but they really can't think the thought. And that's what you see when a kid grows up. You see them grabbing more and more complicated thoughts, and it makes you super happy. But that's kind of what it reminds me of in EVE Online. They don't quite have the concept to use the equipment yet, but you'll get there at some point, and you'll be a full-grown adult. You'll be able to use all the concepts and all the ships the right way.
So my stepdad, I got into EVE Online, and it was so funny being my stepdad got into EVE Online. I'm like, you're my EVE baby. My little EVE baby, you're just so cute. He even calls himself an EVE. Have I grown up yet to an EVE boy yet? Like,
yeah. I wish we could tractor beam somebody else and pull them behind us, I guess they could approach. Yeah, anyway.
Awesome. Well, we're quite a bit over our normal time here just because I just got lost talking with you here. Been really awesome. I really want to probably get you back on here and do some more work with you definitely in the future. Before we go, though, is there any shout outs that you want to give? Anything that you want to talk about before we wrap this up on here?
Yeah, I said this earlier in the day today, but we'll mark time differently. The guys at TIS that were with us really helped build Talking and Station over the years, and they've all served as inspirations to me, and I'm glad to be associated with all of them, past and present. And I was just looking at our statistics, and we just unbelievable. We are over 1 million views, in a 365-day cycle. And
I remember hearing that on the report that you did, the weekend report.
Yeah, and we're 30,000 unique viewers every month. So maybe they come in for one video and then take off and never come back, but that's pretty consistent through. I looked at it. I didn't know to look at these statistics in this way yet, but I think I've just looked at the sheer volume of viewership that has happened at Talking and Stations over these, and it's just occurring to me now when I'm tired and thinking of retiring at 5 years because I'm doing this too long, how much that is, because it's not that easy to get that flywheel effect that I talked about with momentum. It's very difficult to start. It really helps if somebody pushes you, and so if we can help push other channels and stuff like that, like I offered with you and other people, that's totally what we're willing to do, because it feels really good when it gets loose and you start getting into the higher gear. People start coming and finding you organically, and we're just really blessed to have been around this long to reach this point. So I want to say thank you to everybody that worked on Talking and Stations, and especially the fans that kept coming back and keeping us company and setting us straight, and also patting us on the back when we needed it.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much for all the stuff that you do for the community as well. Definitely enjoy a lot of the content that you put out there, and look forward to seeing a lot more. So thanks so much for being on the show, Matterall. We're going to make sure we get a link to Talking and Stations that'll be inside of the show notes. You can also check out our new website, theageofstories.com. We've got links for all of our different episodes that we have, projects, and links to our to friends of the show. So we'll definitely have you on there. Just go to friends. You'll see Talking to Stations right in there dropped right into there. Thank you all for watching here. Also, just wanted to throw out thanks so much for following us, Habit in Gaming. Always appreciated. Really enjoy having this ability to talk to all of you guys. Thanks Twitch for giving us the abilities here, and Akathron. I'm never gonna be able to pronounce anybody's names, just to warn you all. But thank you so much also for the
tell me about it. What a terrible attitude.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and drop it on off here. Thank you all, and have a great night.